Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and it is new game engine time. And I use the word new very, very lightly because I first started becoming aware of this game engine almost a decade ago. Yeah, this is Luxe, and it has been in development with a bit of a rocky development history for about a decade now. It is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac, and the key reason why I'm talking about it today is because a couple days ago, they finally made it publicly available. So if you want to go ahead and check out Luxe, you can. Once again, Mac, Linux, and Windows plus web target support. You can build for consoles are under development. Switch, I believe, is the first platform they are looking at. It is for making 2D or 3D games, although it is designed as a 2D first engine with a strong 2D playset, but there's also the ability to bring in 3D models, etc. In that functionality, it kind of reminds me probably the most of Defold in terms of capability. It is written in C++. It uses Ren, a custom version of the Ren programming language. I had absolutely zero experience with Ren going into this one, and I haven't bothered learning it. I haven't had to. It's a cool, easy to use kind of language, so I don't mind Ren being the choice behind it. It is created by Studio Any% to use to create their own games, specifically Mossfield Origins and Mossfield Archives. So we're going to check out Luxe today because, again, it is now available for download, once again, for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So we'll come back to some of these details in a second, but I want to talk about how long this has been around. Once upon a time, this was part of something called SnowKit, which was a number of different hacks libraries, and ultimately it had a hacks game engine inside of it called Luxe. This didn't happen. So it used to be open source, one of those things to be aware of. It is not an open source project now. It is kind of source available. They have an interesting pricing model. It's kind of like pay what you can afford or pay what you should. We'll get back to that later on. First, I want to show you a bit of Luxe in action. So when you download Luxe, what you get is a launcher. The launcher looks like this. The launcher will go ahead and download a version of the engine. Specifically, I grabbed the 2025.6.2. As you can see, they release very frequently. They just didn't release publicly up until now. So you can grab it right here. You can also then grab a version of the editor. It will automatically grab the newest version of the engine and editor when you create it. There's also a number of extension modules available, things like Yarn, if you want to have dialogue support in there, shapes, some rendering stuff here, but this is not ready. It's a 4+ renderer they're working on. You got some Kenny assets you can bring in, arcade physics, and so on. So you can bring these down and add them to your games, no problem at all. But what you're probably want to do is start here. So to create a new game, you come here. Now, one thing I got to tell you about Luxe is they use their own terminology for just about everything. So we got these game templates, but they're not called templates. They're called overviews or outlines, which is, again, a bit confusing. You're going to find that pretty consistently with Luxe. They do just use their own terminology constantly. But basically, these are base classes that give you a certain amount of functionality. I'll show you what that's all about in just a minute. I created a simple one. I think did I do empty or pixel? I'm not sure. The tutorial one seems to be out of date and doesn't work that great right now. So I would suggest starting with one of these two, which I've already done. Now, you're going to see in front of you, this is the Luxe editor. And you're going to see I've created a complete gibberish project, but it'll give you an idea of what Luxe is all about. Now, you don't need to use this editor at all, by the way. You can do this entirely in code. So if you are a code first person, you can do your entire project on the code side, or you can do your level creation inside of the Luxe editor and then do the logic on the code side. And I'll show you how the relationships work between those two in just a second. But you see here, you have scenes. So you have a world. Your world contains scenes. So you see here, you can create within your scenes, you can create things like scenes or stages. A stage is a collection of scenes to load together. A scene is obviously like what you're seeing in front of you right now. Entities exist in they're blank, they're nothings, but you can add modifiers to them. Again, the modifier is, they do have their own terminology across the board. You're going to have to learn their terminology. Create a sprite or an instance of a class or whatever. You can create a prototype. You can think of a prototype basically as a prefab. So I've actually created one of those in the past as well. I will show you what that looks like in here. So here you see, here is our scene. And then you're going to notice I've created an instance with a sprite. I think that's over here. So an instance of a sprite over here. And you're going to notice that sprite has modifiers, they call them. Anywhere else, they'd be components. But you see here, we've got that we could add a transform modifier to something, or I could go ahead and just create something blank. So composition works something like this. So you come in here and you create, let's say I'll create an entity. All right, so we created a brand new entity like so. So they do it and then they don't immediately select it. So that's a little confusing at times. So we just created an entity and you're like, okay, where is it at? So I could say, here, let's rename this and we'll call this my entity. All right, so here's my entity. It's in the world. But you're going to notice, okay, well, what do I do with it? It's kind of nothing. So what I can come down here is go, okay, I'm going to attach something to it, and then I'm going to attach a transform to it. Again, you can think of transforms like a component. So now our entity has a transform attached to it. So with our entity selected, I should be able to come up here to the move control, and there is our entity, like so. So that is how the creation process works. And then what you can do is go ahead, now that that's there, and I could go ahead and say add some text to it, and then say, hello, cruel world, like so. So that is how you can populate things in the world. And I can go ahead, I could also attach, and you can attach a number of different things to it, or I could have actually loaded up an instance of a prototype. Now, a prototype, I'll show you that right now. So let's do one of my prototypes here. I created this prototype right there. You can think, oh, there's not much going on with this prototype. What's the dealio here? Well, what you're going to see is this is actually going to be a 3D prototype. So you can switch between 2D and 3D. Oh, I guess I didn't save it from what I did. So I'll show you from the very beginning. So what I can do with a prototype, so again, this could be 2D or 3D. I'm just demonstrating the 3D side of things while I'm here. So I'm going to go ahead and attach something to it. And what I will do is attach a mesh, like so. And then what we're going to do is load in a component for the mesh. And I've copied a file called untitled.obj into my mesh folder that I created in my directory, and then it automatically loads it in. Now, one of the challenges you're going to find there is that doesn't necessarily do hot reloading, which is a little bit irritating. And then what we're going to do is pick a material for it, and we'll just make it mesh solid. So boom, there you go. So that is how you would create an object in the world, and then we could go ahead and save that. So there is our prototype saved. I'll go back to our scene. So this guy right here, by the way, I would really expect double click to load something, but no, you click it, and then you go to above and you load it. It's a little confusing at times. It's definitely, the UI is designed for them to use in-house, and sometimes you can really feel it. So now what I could do is come down here, create, and then I could create a prototype. So, or I can create an instance of a prototype. So here I go ahead and create a cube 3D like this. Now the thing is, I'm in 2D rendering mode, so you're not going to see it. So you'd have to be back to the origin to see it in the 2D mode. So one of those things to be aware of, but that is how basically you think of a prototype like a prefab. Now another thing you may notice here is I have this thing going on right now. This is a tile map. You come up here and go down here, you got full tiles. You got a tile editor, so I'm gonna go here, open up Mike Tiles, and there you can see a tile map that I've created. And you can have multiple layers for it, like so. And then, so I need to pick, this part also isn't incredibly intuitive in terms of how do I get it back. There we go. All right, so here we go. So now I should be able to go to my layer, pick my layer. Okay, I'm not 100% certain how to get back to the editing tool. So again, I struggle a little bit with the tools at times, but you do have a full tile map editor. I should be able to get the tile up here and showing me, oh no, I gotta switch over here to brush mode. Okay, there we go. Switch over here, Mike Tiles visual. There you go. So there you can see, come in here, and you can paint tiles accordingly. As you see, user interface can be a little bit obtuse compared to what you're traditionally used to from other engines. Just one of those things you're gonna wanna know about. So there we've added a couple tiles over here. We'll save that out, and then we'll go back on over here to our world. And, oh, it should have updated. It did not. All right. So, again, there are some challenges you're going to find in general. Now, we got another entity over here. This is our sprite here. Come on, select here, sprite. Sprite. All right, so here you go. This guy is pretty straightforward. It is a sprite. It has a transform attached. And the reason why I'm focusing on this one is let's go ahead, click this little icon right here, and this will run our, quote, game. And you can see how, oh, no, what it'll do is crash. Now, this is one other thing you're going to want to be aware of. This is a first release, so there is an element of crashiness. It just happens. Just one of those things to be aware of. I have experienced several crashes at this point in time. Don't be surprised. It just happens. So let's go ahead. We'll load our scene back up and continue. All right, here we go. So here is our sprite, like so. And what I've got code attached to it. So go ahead. We'll run this. Hopefully it will not crash this time. So here it goes. Runs our game. And boom. So here we go in our game. So you can see our tile map in the background. There is our update. Now you notice the update that we made over here, those new tiles we added, it only actually happened after we reloaded the editor. That's the most annoying thing I've seen so far, is there's just simply put no hot reload. It definitely needs hot reload. You'll notice it all the time. So you notice here I have like a left and right control on our sprite, navigating over top of all the other stuff. There's some really neat things to go with the sprites as well. So you come down here to the advanced. We can do things like do a drop shadow. So I can enable a drop shadow on this sprite. Offset it by, let's say, 5. So you can see you got all these tools in here for doing advanced functionality with things like sprite. There's actually a ton of functionality and tools hidden away in here. And you notice you've got all of these different things available as well. And you can add more to it using those modules we saw back in the launcher, which are available over here. So again, we can add more functionality here, which will add them in this modifier category. You'll also notice we have mic. This is my own modifier that I created that has a Boolean. So you can basically extend it, and this works in a very ECS-like manner with the way that code functions. I'll show you an example of how I created mic, which can then be attached to your other projects so you can extend things using code. So let's move on to the code side of things, and this is highly entwined with Visual Studio Code. Now, Visual Studio Code has a full suite of tools. Basically, come into the extensions and search for Ren, and you will find the Luxe suite. So grab that, and it will install all of the things you need to work with Luxe. I suppose you could search for Luxe too, which I guess would make a certain sort of sense. So here we go. This is our world project here. You can see an idea of this is what the project looks like. It will create this for you. And you're going to notice in the scene, for example, Mike scene, it's got this binary file over here, but it's also got this folder over here. And everything that we're creating in the scene on the all of this stuff, so like see these weirdly named items, Sprite 68F and so on, which again, I could rename them to something that's meaningful, but you'll notice over here, Sprite 68F here. It's all code generating. So really all you're doing in the editor side of things is generating code, which is fully accessible over here. So that's pretty nice. On top of that, most things are actually just identified as an ID number. So there's a UID for each item you're creating over here in the world over here. And this is basically populating these Luxe files over here in your scene file. Same thing, you want to bring in an asset. I create a folder called mesh, and I added an untitled.obj file in it, and then you reload the editor. Again, no hot reload, which is very frustrating, but you load the editor in, and it automatically creates a code file for the 3D object you brought in. Ditto for other aspects. So example here, when I created my own extension, or the various different prototypes, they're all being created there. And when I created my own system, which again, my modifier goes in a folder called systems, their naming convention can be very obtuse and frustrating. One of those things you want to be aware of. But here, I created my extension in this folder called system, and I'll show you that extension in just a sec. But first, let's go back to our world of sorts. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not good code or project or anything. I don't know Ren. I've been playing around with this for a couple days to get an idea how the engine itself all works together. You're going to find much better sources for this. But the nice thing here is if you install their extension, you just hit Control-Shift-B, it will run your code, rebuild everything. So that's nice. So you can bring in a new asset, you can do a rebuild here, and it will build all the associated things for it as well. So you see here is our code, your import of the various different things you need up here. Here you can see importing my custom modifier. It's very straightforward in how it's done. And then we're ultimately inheriting game from ready. Now that gets a little confusing in terms of what a ready is. Ready is basically going to determine that base class when they called them outlines. So you go here to outline, and you're going to see here it created this. So this is the base class that your game ultimately inherits from. They called it ready. Again, weird naming conventions they've gone with. But this is, I think, the pixel-based example here, but inherits ultimately from main. So this is the entry point of your project. It sets up a lot of things for you, like your camera, your positions, and so on. Ultimately, so it's inheriting from main, create a class called ready, and in there it's creating a UI, a world, a display, a camera, a UI for your camera layer, a display camera, etc. So all the stuff you need to get your game up and going, the base class of your game, is here in this outlines ready.ren folder. And then you're going to come back over here. So Mike, so our entry point here is game.ren. And you're going to notice here, so my class inherits from ready, which is game. And then it's your traditional game programming approach. So you've got callbacks. So on ready, so this is called when your code is loaded. You're going to go ahead and create the world. We create our scene. So this is the scene that we created over here. Our scene is called scene/Mike. So we create an instance of scene/Mike. We set the clear background color to black. And here you can see this is us getting a reference to the player. The player in this case is this sprite right here, which is named sprite-68f. So what we're basically doing, here's how you hook up and get access to your various different entities from your game world. And this is basically, this is just an int or a UID of the entity being called. So how do you actually handle these entities? Well, here you can see another thing, tick. This is basically called each pass through your game loop. So this is a callback that's going to be called over and over and over again. This is where your game logic will generally go. I'm doing straightforward calls of if state down key dot right. So if you press the right key, transform, translate. So here you can see all of your systems, such as the transform system, take a user ID of an entity in, so our player, and we can say move it right 1 and then down 0. And then the same thing if we hit left, move it left 1, down 0. And then if you hit the escape key, exit our application. So that is how code works. By the way, you don't need to use the editor at all. So I could have created this player, the sprite, and all of the modifiers, which we would all, the rest of the world would call components. We could add them all to our entity and just kind of go from there completely in code if you wish. So you do not need to use the editor at all. And that's probably the way a lot of people will work, because quite honestly, at this point in time, this side of the equation, it's nice, but it definitely crashes a bit. So just one of those things you want to be aware of. So that's how that works. And if you want to extend things, this is like the super simplest example. Basically, I created a folder called system. Inside of system, I added mic.modifier.ren. The name, this side doesn't matter. This .modifier.ren is important. It's what identifies it as being a modifier, and it knows what to do as a result. Import the API functionality in. Our thing inherits from API, so we created a new class called mic of type API. And then here's where your ECS side of things here. So system, this is a set of code that will operate on all mics in the world. So the example they used was doors. So you could create a door system, and then you'd have like open or so on and in there. So this one's just basically straightforward callbacks. So this is a modifier, which in any other world we would call a component. And this is a system. And then what you do basically is like here, initialization, it gets passed in the world, attached. So when it is attached to a given entity, it will come up here. When it's detached, this will be called. And then this code is called every single frame and does literally nothing. So that is how you would create your own extensions that would go over here. And then boom, you can see. So you'll also notice I have Mike Bool exposed. Well, that is this. So right here, you've got this block data. And this is class data is basically your exposed variables. So these are common elements. So if you've used ECS or entity component systems at all, this entire thing is kind of like an ECS all in one spot. So your entity gets attached. So the entity isn't here, but your components basically are the data side of things over here. And then your systems are this, the system side of things that inherits from modifier. So that is how you can go ahead and extend this system. It's a very unique setup. And at first I couldn't stand it. And then as I kind of started to get it a little bit more, I started liking it a little bit more. In some ways, it really feels like two game engines I've worked with. One is the default game engine, and the other one was a Lua-based game engine called Moi from way back when. And it kind of uses the same approach where the entity is ultimately like kind of a UID, and you pass it into a variety of functions to operate on it. And once you kind of get used to it, it becomes quite intuitive. Now, one thing you're going to find, speaking of intuitive or the lack thereof, navigating your way through Luxe can be a definite challenge. So there is a manual available. So the documentation is here. There is a guide. Walks you through everything you need to know in theory to learn Luxe. You're going to find some of this is outdated as it's changed over time. So definitely one of those things you're going to move on aware of. You're going to not find everything you need in this particular setting. So just be aware. You do have like basic getting started tutorials that you want to be aware of. But where you're going to find actually a lot more information, not there, it's here. So this is your articles. There are a number of dev logs. So basically come down into, this is also a little confusing, go to dev, and then all of them are available here. Well, now what you're going to notice is 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018. So there's a ton of information in here, but these older ones have been like superseded or outdated. But these ones, basically the modifiers, custom modifiers, scenes, and project. And then the newest announcement is that Luxe is now available. But there is a ton of detail in these blogs that tell you probably more about how to use the whole Luxe engine than anything else you're going to find anywhere. So you're going to probably want to go through at least those last 4 or 5 dev logs to really understand what's going on. But you're going to be doing a lot of trial and error and exploring. It's just part of the nature of the engine. Just one of those things you're going to want to be aware of. This is not for the faint of heart at this point in time. It's a little early on, but it is a one-of-a-kind engine. And I think it's worth checking out if you're looking for something a little bit different, especially if you want to be code focused but have the editor available to you, then this could be an interesting one for you. Now, there is that detail about what this costs. Let me just locate that. All right, here we go. So the pricing basically works on pay what you should if you can level. So you've got a free tier. If you want to go ahead and check this one out, free tier, go download exact same version I've got right now, and it gives you unlimited access. So there's no questions asked. It's basically full functioning, nothing stripped away. So you can do whatever you want here. So, and it's got options there. If you're a student or using it for game jam, completely free. So if you are a tinkerer, there is a tier for that. If you are an explorer, you should support it at this tier. If you are a foundation or funded under a certain requirement or have access to over 100K USD in the last year, this is the tier you should be supporting them at. And then if you are a business, you must contact them for the pricing. That's one of those things to be aware of. So you can use it completely for free, and then they have these basically suggested pricing tiers here, except for if you make over $1 million, in which case there is no suggestion there, and it is a requirement. So that is the pricing. It's an interesting model. There's a bit of a breakdown of why they went with it over here. Also, a little bit more detail about the various different things, where you can develop it on, the languages that are used. By the way, Luxe itself is written in C++, but it's not ultimately C++ you're working with. You're working entirely with Ren. There is a visual scripting language in the works. Source code access, this is also interesting. Everything but the engine runtime core will be readily made available soon. Many existing users already have access to the core, but we'll have more news about wider access in the near future. So we consider it important, especially in production. Talk to us if shipping something. So right now, the code is available through requests. And I don't think this will be anything ever than like code available. So it's going to have basically the same licensing model that you see with like the Flax engine, Unreal Engine, etc. But you will have access to the source code eventually. The other thing they do have here is that roadmap. So if you're interested in learning where they're going, features that they're ultimately planning to add, they are all here. Interesting, you'll see C# support is an option, although very far off. There is a visual scripting that they're working on an implementation at some point in time. But you see the other features and functionality they are looking to add. So, for example, if you're working with sprites, you can drill down here and find out those details of the new things that they're adding, things like dissolve shadows and so on. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is Luxe, available at luxeengine.com. Again, a very unique, one-of-a-kind game engine that's been a decade in the making. Let me know what you think of Luxe. Comments down below. I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.